When I opened my eyes, the hospital room ceiling stared blankly back at me. The sharp scent of antiseptic, the rhythmic beep of the heart monitor, the distant shuffle of nurses' shoes, all reminders that I had narrowly made it out alive. Triple bypass surgery at 67 wasn't exactly how I imagined spending my autumn years. I had pictured something quieter, gardening in my backyard, reading mystery novels by the fire, maybe even finally starting that little model train set Eleanor used to tease me about. Instead, my heart had betrayed me, just like so many other things lately. They said I was lucky, that if I hadn't called the ambulance that morning, I'd be 6 feet under. I didn't feel lucky. I felt hollow, tired, alone. The only person who visited me was my daughter, Madeline. Madeline, my beautiful, brilliant, once sweet girl. She was 34, single, stylish, confident, the kind of woman who lit up every room she walked into. She always had dreams bigger than this town. But somewhere along the way, her ambition turned sharp, cold, calculating. She sat beside me with her perfectly manicured nails and that ever-scrolling phone in her hand. "Don't worry, Dad," she said with that familiar fake warm smile. "I've been taking care of everything. Your house, your mail, your bank. You just rest." I was groggy from the meds. My chest felt like it had been torn open and stapled shut, which, to be fair, it had. I nodded weakly. What choice did I have? The days blurred. I slept a lot. Dreamed in flashes. Memories of Eleanor's laughter. Madeline's first steps. The time I taught her to ride a bike and she refused to let go of my hand. Then I came home. It was 3 weeks later. I walked slowly into my house, cane in hand, the nurse helping me settle in. It felt off. Like someone had lived here without loving it. The cushions were out of place. My favorite clock was gone. The books were dusted, but not the way I did it. That night, I tried logging into my online banking. Just habit. I wasn't even thinking clearly. Just typed in my password like muscle memory. Balance, $1,042.17. My heart dropped. That had to be wrong. I clicked through. Page after page. Charges from places I didn't recognize. Maldives Grand Resort. Designer clothing. First-class flights. Spas. Restaurants. $1,500 here. $2,800 there. One charge was $11,900. Luxury Experiences International. And the name tied to the bookings? Madeline Whittaker. I stared at the screen for a long time, my chest suddenly tighter than when I was in the hospital. Not from clogged arteries, but from betrayal. I sat still, staring at the monitor, as if willing the numbers to disappear. But they didn't. They were real. And worse, they didn't vanish on their own. They had vanished from my life. $32,000. I scrolled through the transactions again and again, each one hitting like a punch to the chest. Luxury Experience International, $11,900. Villa Pearl Resort, $6,400. Zalmani Jewelry, $3,850. Restaurants with names I couldn't even pronounce. Airline bookings, spas, designer clothing, even a private yacht charter. One of the entries listed a name, Moreno. I froze. That wasn't her last name. That was... The memory hit like a slap. Zachary. Zach. Her boyfriend. I'd seen him once or twice. A smug, smooth-talking guy with designer sneakers and eyes that never quite met yours. He came to Thanksgiving once, wouldn't shut up about crypto, passive income, and leveraging other people's money. "He's just amazing, Dad. You don't get it," she'd told me. Oh, I got it now. I opened her Instagram. She didn't know I still had access to her old account. I found it, opened it, and there they were. Photos. They were in the Maldives. Laughing. Dressed in white. Champagne flutes in hand. The caption read, Living the life we deserve. Clinking glasses sparkles. Another photo. In front of a luxury villa. Zach in linen shorts, her in some designer bikini. I noticed the watch on his wrist. Looked just like mine, the one that had vanished from my drawer while I was in the hospital. A gift from my late wife on my 60th birthday. I didn't feel rage. I just felt hollow. This wasn't just money wasted. It was betrayal. A conscious decision to walk all over the man who gave her everything. Her education, her home, support after her divorce, unconditional love. I stood up. Slowly. My chest ached, not from clogged arteries this time, but something colder. In the hallway mirror, I saw myself. Older. Tired. But no longer weak. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg. But I was going to act. Quietly. Carefully. And permanently. The day after I came home, I called an old friend, David Klein, my lawyer. We hadn't spoken much in the past few years, but he was steady, reliable, the kind of man who could keep a secret and think 10 moves ahead. "Tom, I'm sorry to hear about the surgery. How are you feeling?" he asked, his voice calm and warm. "Better," I said slowly. "But I have a problem. My daughter has been using my accounts while I was in the hospital. Thousands of dollars gone. I don't want to cause a scandal, but I can't just sit back." David sighed. "You want to protect your assets and maybe revise your will?" "That's exactly it." He told me to come by his office. When I arrived, the walls were lined with old books, certificates, and photos of happy clients. He handed me a folder. "We'll draft a new will. Change the beneficiaries. You can restrict access to your accounts. We can put safeguards in place so Madeline won't touch a dime without your permission." I nodded. Relief mixed with sadness. "This isn't just about money," I said. "It's about trust. About respect. Something she's clearly forgotten." David gave a knowing look. "Let's get to work. But, Tom, be careful. Family disputes can get ugly." I knew that well. After the meeting, I felt a strange weight lift. I was no longer powerless. That evening, Madeline called. "Dad, I just want you to know. I did all this because I thought you were gone for good. I needed to live, to breathe. I'm sorry." I listened quietly. No anger. No tears. Just silence. I had decisions to make. Days passed, and the house grew quieter. Madeline stopped visiting as often, her calls shorter, more strained. I wasn't naive. I knew she was avoiding me, probably hoping I'd drop the whole matter. But I wasn't the same man who used to let things slide. With David's help, I had changed the locks, canceled all credit cards linked to my accounts, and transferred ownership of the house and remaining assets to a trust, one that excluded her. It was a cold move, but necessary. The morning I informed Madeline of the changes, she didn't react with anger or tears. Instead, she was stunned. The silence on the phone was heavier than any shout. You can't do that, Dad. This is my home too," she said, voice trembling. "No, it's not," I replied calmly. "Not anymore." The next week, I received a letter, handwritten, shaky. Madeline was desperate to make amends, promising to repay what she'd spent, asking for one last chance. I read it twice. I kept it folded on the kitchen table. No response. Instead, I started reaching out to Eric. My younger son, the one she convinced me to turn away years ago. The one I hadn't spoken to in nearly a decade. Eric was surprised to hear from me. "Dad, after all this time, what's going on?" I told him everything. The surgery, the theft, Madeline's betrayal. He didn't judge. He just listened. "Maybe it's time to rebuild," he said quietly. For the first time in years, I felt a glimmer of hope. It took nearly a week before Eric and I met in person. A small cafe downtown, neutral ground, quiet, far from the tension hanging over my house. He looked older, more worn than the last time I saw him, but the same earnest eyes stared back at me. I never wanted to lose you, I said, voice cracking. But I didn't know how to fight against what Madeline said. I'm sorry, Eric. He shook his head. It wasn't just you, Dad. I should have reached out sooner, but I was hurt too. We talked for hours about the past, mistakes, and the pain we both carried. About the family we once had. It felt fragile, like walking on thin ice, but it was a start. Back home, Madeline's absence was deafening. The house, once full of laughter and warmth, felt hollow. I walked through rooms she had filled with her things, now gathering dust. One afternoon, Grace, my nurse, noticed. You're holding it together better than I expected, she said kindly. But this loneliness, it's eating you. I nodded. Sometimes, the people you love the most are the ones who hurt you the deepest. She smiled softly. Healing takes time. Days later, I found a photo album tucked away in a drawer. Pictures of Madeline as a child, her smiling face framed by the golden light of summer. I traced her features with my finger. Could I forgive her? Could I even want to? Only time would tell. One rainy afternoon, as I sat reading by the window, the doorbell rang unexpectedly. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door to find a woman I hadn't seen in years, Jessica, Madeline's best friend from college. She looked uneasy, her eyes darting around as if afraid to step inside. Thomas, she said softly, I needed to talk to you. We sat down in the living room, rain tapping gently against the windows. Jessica hesitated, then spoke. Madeline's not who she seems. She's been under a lot of pressure. From Zach, from work, from everything. I wanted to warn you. I frowned. Warn me? About what? She's been hiding things. Using your money wasn't just impulsive, Zach pushed her. He's not the man you think. He's manipulative, controlling. I thought you should know before it's too late. Her words cut deep, but they also explained so much. Thank you for telling me, I said quietly. Jessica stood up to leave, but paused at the door. I want to help, Thomas. If you'll let me. I looked at her, wondering if I could trust anyone anymore. Maybe, just maybe, this was the first step toward uncovering the full truth. That night, after Jessica left, I sat alone in the dim light of the living room, the rain still pattering softly against the windowpane. Her words echoed in my mind like a haunting melody. Zach was no harmless boyfriend. He was a manipulator, a predator hiding behind charm and flashy smiles. I found myself questioning everything. How could I have been so blind? How had I trusted Madeline's version of reality without seeing the shadows lurking beneath? I pulled out my laptop and reopened Madeline's social media accounts. Photos and videos danced across the screen. Smiling faces, glittering parties, champagne toasts. But beneath the surface, something was off. In some of the videos, Zach's tone shifted when no one was looking. A quick glare here, a dismissive gesture there. A subtle control masked by the veneer of carefree luxury. The next day, I spoke with Grace. I told her about Jessica's visit, about the doubts creeping into my heart. She looked at me with kind eyes. Thomas, people like Zach don't just come out of nowhere. They prey on weaknesses, the need for approval, love, escape. I nodded, swallowing the lump forming in my throat. Determined to uncover the truth, I called David again. We need to find out more about Zach Moreno, I said firmly. Background checks, financial records, anything. David didn't hesitate. I'll start tomorrow. You focus on recovering. The days dragged on, but slowly, bits of information came to light. Zach wasn't just a smooth talker, he was tangled in debts, lawsuits, and questionable business deals. Several people mentioned his pattern: charm, spending sprees on others' money, then disappearing. It hit me harder than I expected. Madeline wasn't just careless, she was trapped. But by whom? That realization brought a storm of conflicting emotions: anger, sadness, pity. I wanted to save her, but first, I had to save myself. The next time Madeline called, I was ready. The phone rang late one evening, the kind of ring that unsettles you because it carries all the weight of unspoken words. I hesitated before answering, my heart pounding like a trapped bird. "Dad." Madeline's voice was softer than I remembered, trembling on the edge of something fragile. "I know," I said quietly. "I know about Zach. About everything." A long silence followed, thick with regret and fear. "Why did you let it go this far?" I asked, fighting the ache in my chest. "Why didn't you come to me sooner?" Her breath hitched. "I was scared, Dad. Zach, he promised me everything. Love, freedom. But it was a lie. I was drowning, and I didn't want to drag you down with me." "I'm not blind, Madeline. I see the choices you made, and the price I'm paying." "I never wanted to hurt you," she whispered. "I thought I was doing what I had to." The conversation spiraled into memories and shattered dreams. We spoke of her loneliness, my absence, the cracks that grew between us over the years. I realized then that our fight wasn't just about money. It was about love, twisted, broken, and desperate. "Tell me," I said gently, "how do we fix this?" For the first time in months, hope flickered in her voice. "I don't know yet. But I want to try." That night, I slept with a heavy heart, torn between anger and the faint promise of reconciliation. The morning sun spilled weakly through the blinds, casting long shadows across the worn carpet of my living room. The house still felt hollow, haunted by absence and echoes of the past. Yet, for the first time in weeks, a fragile thread of hope tugged at the edges of my heart. I was waiting for Jessica's arrival. She had insisted on coming back, determined to help me untangle the web that Zach had spun around Madeline. I wasn't sure if I could trust her completely, but desperate times called for unexpected allies. When she stepped inside, her eyes were weary but resolute. She carried a folder thick with printed emails, photos, and screenshots from social media. Evidence she had painstakingly gathered over the past few months. "We have to move carefully," Jessica said, lowering her voice. "Zach isn't just reckless, he's dangerous. His debts are tied to some unsavory people. If we confront him head-on, it could backfire." I nodded, absorbing every word. I felt like a chess player forced to make moves without knowing the full board. Jessica unfolded a map of Madeline's recent travels, highlighting the villas, clubs, and luxury resorts where Zach had paraded their stolen fortune. She pointed to a series of transactions tied to offshore accounts, shadowy financial pathways meant to hide their tracks. "It's a mess," she admitted. "But it's also our leverage." 4 hours, we pieced together a plan. Legal steps, ways to freeze assets, strategies to isolate Zach from Madeline's life. I felt the first stirrings of control returning to my hands, a contrast to the helplessness I'd felt when I first discovered the theft. Later that day, Eric stopped by. Seeing Jessica and the folders spread out on the dining table, he smiled faintly, cautious but willing. "We're going to fix this," I told him. He nodded. "One step at a time." As the sun set, the house felt a little less empty. The battle was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, I wasn't fighting alone. The days that followed were a blur of phone calls, meetings, and restless nights. Every moment seemed charged with tension, as though the air itself was waiting for the inevitable clash. The quiet house that had once been my sanctuary transformed into a command center. Maps sprawled across the dining table, files stacked like battlements, and the constant hum of my computer processing leads. Jessica had become an unlikely partner, part confidant, part investigator. Her presence was both a comfort and a reminder of how deep the betrayal ran. Each document she produced, each secret she revealed, chipped away at the carefully constructed facade Madeline and Zach had maintained. One afternoon, as the late spring sun filtered through dusty curtains, Jessica and I sat cross-legged on the floor surrounded by evidence. Bank statements smeared with fraudulent charges, private messages hinting at deception, and photographs from exclusive resorts. Her voice was low but urgent. "Zach isn't just exploiting your daughter's trust," she said, pointing to an email thread between Zach and an unknown correspondent. "He's involved in a money laundering scheme." The stolen funds likely fund more than just their vacations. I swallowed hard. The world I'd known, the one where my biggest worries were everyday struggles and family disputes, had shifted. It was no longer a simple tale of betrayal. This was dangerous. Days later, David, my lawyer, confirmed the legal groundwork. We had filed for injunctions to freeze assets linked to Zach and Madeline. The court date loomed like a storm on the horizon. Madeline remained silent, a ghost drifting through my home during rare visits, her eyes avoiding mine. In this charged atmosphere, Eric stepped forward like a lighthouse in a storm. His steady presence grounded me when despair threatened to overwhelm. We met often, strategizing, sharing stories of a family torn apart but not yet broken. One evening, after an exhaustive day of meetings, Eric and I sat on the porch, the sky painted with streaks of orange and purple. The weight of the fight settled heavily on my shoulders. "Dad," he began quietly, "you're stronger than you think. Madeline will have to face the truth eventually. When she does, we'll be here." His words were balm to my battered spirit. For the first time in months, I dared to hope. But the peace was fragile. One morning, as I was going through mail, a plain envelope without a return address caught my eye. Inside was a photograph, a snapshot of Zach standing outside our house, a cold smile on his face. Along with it was a note, "Stay out of our business." Fear, sharp and sudden, clenched my gut. The battle lines were no longer drawn quietly in legal documents. They were drawn in threats, shadows creeping closer. That night, Grace stayed late to check my vitals. She noticed the tension. "You need to be careful, Thomas," she warned softly. "This isn't just a family fight anymore." I looked at her, the woman who had cared for me through my weakest moments. "I'm not afraid," I said. "Because I'm fighting for something bigger than money. I'm fighting for my family." The war was just beginning, but I was ready. Not just for Zach and Madeline, but for the shattered pieces of trust and love I still clung to. The tension that had been simmering beneath the surface finally began to boil over. The fragile peace between us shattered, and every interaction, every word, felt like stepping on thin ice that could crack beneath our feet. Madeline's visits grew erratic. Sometimes she would appear at the door, eyes swollen from crying, her voice thick with desperation. Other times, she would disappear for days without a word, leaving behind a silence heavier than before. Her carefully maintained facade of control was slipping, and I could sense it, even if she tried to hide it. One evening, I received a call from Eric, his voice low and urgent. "Dad, something's happened. Madeline, she's in trouble." My heart pounded in my chest. "What do you mean?" "She got into a fight with Zach. It got physical. She's shaken up, but safe for now. She called me last night. She doesn't know who else to turn to." That night, I paced the living room, memories flooding back. The girl who once clung to my hand, the woman now lost in a maze of her own making. The thought of her suffering, trapped in a toxic relationship, broke something inside me. The next day, Madeline arrived at the house, her face bruised, eyes haunted. She looked at me with a mixture of shame and pleading. "Dad, I need help. I don't know how to get out." I didn't hesitate. I embraced her, the weight of years of anger melting into a fierce determination to save her. "You're not alone. We'll get through this together." With Eric and Jessica's support, we devised a plan to legally separate Madeline from Zach, to protect her from further harm. The process was painful and slow, each step a reminder of how far she had fallen. But amidst the turmoil, something shifted. Madeline began to open up, to confront her mistakes, and to fight for her own redemption. The walls between us started to crumble, brick by brick. One late night, as we sat in the quiet kitchen, she whispered, "I'm sorry, Dad. For everything. For breaking your trust." I took her hand, steady and warm. "I forgive you. But now, we have to rebuild. Together." The road ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges and scars. But for the first time, the cracks in our family felt like openings, doorways to healing. The days that followed felt like stepping into uncharted territory. Madeline's bruises had faded, but the scars she carried ran much deeper. Each morning she woke with a mixture of hope and fear, unsure if this time she would finally break free from the chains Zack had wrapped around her life. Our home, once so silent and cold, began to hum with cautious life. Eric spent countless hours helping with repairs, fixing what had been neglected, while Jessica navigated the legal labyrinth, filing restraining orders and ensuring Madeline's safety. Madeline herself surprised me most of all. Gone was the arrogance and entitlement that had marked her before. In their place was vulnerability and a determination to reclaim control over her life. She attended counseling sessions, joined support groups, and took small but meaningful steps towards independence. One afternoon, she sat beside me on the porch, staring at the horizon where the sun melted into the trees. "Dad," she began hesitantly, "I want to make things right. Not just with you, but with myself." I nodded, sensing the weight behind her words. "Whatever it takes," I replied, squeezing her hand gently. But the road to redemption was not a straight path. Old wounds resurfaced, and sometimes, her resolve faltered under the pressure of guilt and shame. There were nights she'd sit in the dark, overwhelmed by memories of betrayal and loss. One such night, I found her weeping quietly in the kitchen. I sat down beside her, offering silent support until the tears subsided. "Don't be afraid to fall apart," I whispered. "It's how we learn to put ourselves back together." Slowly, she began to rebuild her life, finding a new job, reconnecting with old friends, and even volunteering at a local shelter. Each step was a testament to her resilience, and to the fragile but growing bond between us. I realized that while I had once sought to protect her through control and retribution, true healing came from forgiveness and trust. As spring blossomed outside our windows, so did the possibility of a new beginning, not just for Madeline, but for all of us. The first time we sat down together as a family in years was awkward and raw. The dining table, once a place of warmth and laughter, felt foreign beneath our hands. Eric, Madeline, and I exchanged tentative glances, words caught in the chasm of past wounds. Madeline had been sober for several months now, attending meetings and therapy, slowly rebuilding her life. Eric had grown quieter but more present, his steady support a balm to the fractured family. I cleared my throat, breaking the silence. "I'm proud of you, Madeline, for everything you've faced and how far you've come." Her eyes shimmered with tears, a mixture of gratitude and vulnerability. "Thank you, Dad, for never giving up on me." Eric smiled softly. "We're a family. That means standing together, even when it's hard." As we ate, stories flowed, tentative at first, then with growing ease. We laughed about old memories, shared hopes for the future, and acknowledged the pain that had shaped us. The house felt warmer, the walls echoing with a newfound sense of belonging. Over the following weeks, we worked to rebuild more than just relationships. Repairs to the house mirrored the healing of our bonds, broken fixtures fixed, faded paint refreshed, and cracks in the foundation carefully sealed. Madeline started planning her own place but promised to stay close. Eric took on more responsibility, helping manage the household and caring for me in my recovery. One evening, as the sun set, painting the sky with shades of gold and pink, we gathered on the porch. The silence was comfortable, filled with understanding and hope. "Maybe we're not perfect," I said, "but we're still family." Madeline nodded. "And that's enough." The journey had been painful and far from over, but for the first time, I believed in a future where we could heal together, stronger, wiser, and united. The days gradually settled into a new rhythm, one built not on past mistakes, but on conscious effort and growing trust. Every morning, the sunlight poured through the windows, a reminder that despite the darkness we had endured, there was always a chance for renewal. Madeline had taken a job at a local nonprofit, helping women who had suffered from abusive relationships. Watching her share her story and strength with others was both heartbreaking and inspiring. She was transforming her pain into purpose. Eric became my steadfast support, balancing work and family responsibilities with an ease that belied the wounds of our past. Together, we maintained the house, mended fences with neighbors, and slowly stitched together a community. I, too, found moments of peace, quiet walks in the park, afternoons spent reading old books, and evenings listening to soft jazz as the city lights flickered on. The scars of betrayal still lingered, but their sharp edges dulled with time. One Sunday afternoon, we hosted a small gathering. Friends and family came together in the backyard, laughter spilling over like warm honey. Madeline smiled freely, her eyes shining with genuine happiness. Eric shared stories with old friends, and I watched with a quiet pride that swelled in my chest. As twilight descended, I stood apart for a moment, breathing in the scent of blooming flowers and the hum of contentment. The journey had been long, filled with pain, anger, and tears. But standing there, surrounded by the people I loved, I knew we had taken the hardest step, moving forward. The morning light spilled gently through the curtains, casting a soft glow over the quiet house. It was a new day, not just on the calendar, but in the rhythm of our lives. The past was still there, a shadow at the edges, but it no longer dictated our steps. Madeline had moved into her own apartment a few blocks away, a place she was slowly turning into a home. Our conversations had grown more open, filled with honesty and cautious optimism. She was learning to live not as the girl who made mistakes but as the woman reclaiming her life. Eric visited often, a steady anchor in the shifting tides. We shared dinners, laughter, and moments of silence that spoke louder than words. The wounds between us had not vanished, but they were healing, knitted together by forgiveness and understanding. One afternoon, as I sat on the porch watching the leaves dance in the breeze, Madeline joined me. She held a small potted plant, a symbol of growth and resilience. "I want to start fresh," she said, placing it beside me. "Not just with you and Eric, but with myself." I smiled, the weight in my chest lifting. That's all any of us can do. The days continued, marked by small victories and setbacks, but always moving forward. The house no longer felt empty or haunted, it was a place of renewal. In that quiet moment, surrounded by the people who mattered most, I realized that true justice wasn't in retribution or punishment. It was in the chance to heal, to forgive, and to build something new from the ruins. Our family was reborn, imperfect, scarred, but stronger than ever. Thank you for listening to this story. If it touched your heart, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel so you won't miss more captivating tales. Be sure to check out our other stories waiting for you here, each one crafted to inspire hope, justice, and the power of family. Stay with us, and let every story remind you that even in the darkest moments, there's light to be found.